two players I want to get at. Bernardo Silva might be entering the end of a cycle because that's another match where he's gone missing. And John Stones, yet again, you can't rely on John Stones in the same ways that you could before. Those two players who are now leaders in that locker room, Nige, when you have so many new faces coming in to a City side that was so Kevin De Bruyne dependent, that had a core from before, there is a loss of luster, but there's also this loss of energy with City.
Very disappointed with this score. Nigel, what do you think?
Yeah, they will be disappointed.
They were 2-1 up, weren't they?
They were 2-1 up. They set the standards. But again, I think what we have to come to realisation now, this is not a Manchester City we're going to see as dominant when Pep Guardiola was at the mountain peak. That's the reality of it now. They've lost their aura. They've lost their aura. I wouldn't say they've gone forever. They would always still be expected to compete and challenge at least minimum a top 4 finish with the players and the quality that they have. But they're not going to be that dominant force that strikes fear in whoever they're playing against now. That is a game that Manchester City should have been clean and gone by and really put to bed. Good chances, weren't clinical enough. Reinders hit the bar. Monaco keeper made some saves, but for me, it's just poor defending there. That goal there should not be conceded. It's lazy defending. Anytime you put your foot that high in the box, just the common sense of what you're taught as a player, you're asking for trouble. You cannot put your foot that high. What you need to do is do the right thing defensively and get yourself in the right areas. Get there before Eric Dier. Don't let Eric Dier bully you and pull you out of the way and you have to cheat and put your foot that high. So for me, it's fundamental, simple mistakes that Manchester City should not be making with the level of players and quality that they have.
I'm just a little bit more concerned about some of the wider issues as well, like Rodri coming off in terms of as an injury. We don't obviously know the full context of it at this moment, but with his recent injury history, that is a massive, I would say, question mark and probably a voice of concern right now for Pep Guardiola because, truth be told, and probably the reason as to why they're conceding late goals like that, they're just not the same team when they haven't got their best players. I look at the spine of this team and I think to myself, Haaland, Foden, Rodri, either Diaz or Stones and Donnarumma, that should be good enough as a spine within Europe to compete with anybody. But there's something missing, and Nigel's right. The connectivity, the continuity, it just isn't there right now for Manchester City. And I think Pep can see it too. I think there's an essence of him understanding this isn't quite the team that I had in 22-23, and I don't know how to kind of revamp or revitalise or put in my ethos into this team like he once did.
Yeah, Manchester City used to be the most ruthless team on planet Earth, right? That game should have been put to bed by halftime, irregardless of the goal we saw from Jordan Teze. There's two things happening, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Nige, with talking about leaving goals on the table for City. Erling Haaland gets his goal in the first half. Erling Haaland in the second half, still not clinical in the ways that you would like to see. He's still getting his goals. Two players I want to get at. Bernardo Silva might be entering the end of a cycle because that's another match where he's gone missing. And John Stones, yet again, you can't rely on John Stones in the same ways that you could before. Those two players who are now leaders in that locker room, Nige, when you have so many new faces coming in to a City side that was so Kevin De Bruyne dependent, that had a core from before, there is a loss of luster, but there's also this loss of energy with City. After 60 minutes now, same in Brighton. After 60 minutes, the energy levels just plummet for City and Pep. And it's as if teams just smell blood in the water. And this Monaco side, the goal was coming. You could feel that something was coming. And then they got a just reward in getting a goal. Although it's a bad tackle for the penalty, that was a deserved 2-2 draw, in my opinion, for Monaco.
It wasn't a tackle. It was a bit of a kick to the face, isn't it?
Do you think they're tired? Like, genuinely think they're tired? Like, you know, sometimes, and you don't know this, when you see a manager and you hear the same voice, after a while,
it does get boring.
Redundant, right?
This is what... But I give credit to Pep Guardiola because one of the greats who did it was Sir Alex Ferguson. Sir Alex Ferguson would change his assistant managers quite frequently at Manchester United. And that's what people don't realise. As players,
McLaren,
it becomes like white noise. So Sir Alex Ferguson should change his assistant all the time because they'll be the ones that do most of the training and the football side and the tactical side, and he be a manager. I think with Pep Guardiola as well, what we've got to be honest about, in my opinion, is we always talk about it a lot off camera. We say about characters in the game. Go back to look at Pep Guardiola's side and the characters. Some names might not be big names that people might know a lot of, but I was fortunate to play with a few of them. Fabian Delph, small lad. But when I mean he's got a character, he has got a character. He might not be one of the big names that people talk about. You talk about the great Pep Guardiola. Company, the captain, big character. There's so many characters that he had, so many natural leaders in the game, which is why Manchester City were able to build that aura, that success. You talk about Yaya Toure. But now when you look, Kyle Walker's another one. When you look at this team now, I don't know these players personally to a level, but you can see a character when you know a character by watching the game of football, from playing and being in the dressing room. I don't think they're as vocal and have that character and that mindset as Pep once did, because the game has changed now. A lot of players nowadays are very quiet. They don't talk to each other. When you speak to the managers and coaches and friends who are in the game, they'll tell you the same thing. It's just generally not. And whenever you listen to managers and coaches, what they say, one of the main things that most of these managers and coaches want to do now is team bonding, team building. You speak to managers at a club, like I spoke recently at West Ham before Graham Potter was fired. He tried to do team bonding to get the players to talk together. You talk to players like, that is a big part. When you've got a team with at least 3 or 4 big characters who go out there, they're the ones that will manage that team for you when you play. You don't have to do much as a manager or coach. When you've got those players willing to take that responsibility, that burden, they will do it. And it's not always your best player.
It is.
It's not always your goal scorer.
That's true.
It could be your player that you can put your hat on to say he's going to be a 7 or 8 out of 10, week in, week out. That's the character, because everyone else will follow his leadership because they know what he's going to give you week in, week out. So there's many things that go into it, and it's just not one answer. But that's what I see, which goes to Michael's point, that when you see this Manchester City tide now, 65, 70 minutes, they look like they just start to go downhill after that and can't finish the full 90 minutes.
Yeah, I remember the feeling of, as a player, when you're away from home, and there has to be a conversation about City away from home.
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah, we've actually got a graphic for everyone to see their away form. Is it becoming worrying at this point?
Yeah, it really is in the Champions League. And in the Premier League, they're still going to figure themselves out. And as I said before, with all the new players coming in, this is still a transition part of the season for Manchester City. But now, if I'm a team in the Champions League, and I know I have City coming to my stadium, I don't fear them as much. If you can survive the first 60 minutes of a match, the first half, right? Keep it competitive. It goes back to what you said about characters. City's locker room right now, there has to be questions asked about the personality of this team. You had mentioned Rodri still trying to figure out his body, trusting his body. That is one of the most difficult things as a player. And I can tell you from personal experience, when it comes to these big matches, you need a player like Rodri who is your leader of the team and is that player that can spark a change in personality and a change in psyche for this Manchester City team. But after that, who's the guy? It's not John Stones, because he's never available. Is it Ruben Dias? He's not having the same season. They need kind of a come-to-Jesus moment right now to figure out, are they a City that's going to, seriously, to figure out, are they a Manchester City that are going to compete for titles, or is this another...
You don't have to bring Jesus into it.
But is this just another write-off year where Champions League, getting back in the Champions League, and just having a season where players are trying to figure it out? Is that going to be the year, or can they truly compete for a trophy?
Listen, if they make it to the next round and they compete in the Premier League, that's it. We know it's still a rebuild, but the reality of it is we're not seeing the City, the dominant City that they once were, and they have lost that fear factor.